I'm not sure. Okay.
I think it's, does it say it's recording? It should be
Uh-huh.
recording now. Okay, we're
Mhm.
good. All right.
It's in progress.
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome, parents. We're so happy that you guys are learning today, and we're learning from you. We just want to make sure that you know that this is a shared journey. We learn so much from parents, honestly, and we're so happy to learn from you, especially on island. We don't know. We're customs and things like that. We're very different here, and so we've learned quite a bit when we did come to visit this last time in American Samoa. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you, Sandy, so much for welcoming us and helping us learn so much about you and your culture and your children. They're so amazing. So we just want you to know that your voice does matter, and please feel free to email us or let us know how you're feeling about things and help us learn and grow from you too. So we're excited about that, the journey there. We're going to kind of start as far as introducing us. My name is Agatha, and I am an assistant teaching professor at BYU. I have been here, this is my third year at BYU, but my past experience really has been in the classroom. I had 20 years in the field, working with kids with disabilities, or actually 16 in the field itself. No, 20 total, 16 in the classroom and four in more of the district area, working specifically with students with behaviors and helping support school districts. And that was a wonderful experience for me. Um, Beth will hopefully be jumping on pretty soon. She can talk a little bit about herself. Margaret, go ahead.
I'm Margaret. I graduated from BYU studying severe disabilities education. I am teaching in a classroom with students who struggle with difficult behavior. And then I'm also participating in a master's program to become a behavior analyst, which will be awesome.
Ocean.
Hi, I'm Ocean. I'm also a student in the master's program, studying to become a behavior analyst. I grew up with several family members, close family members with autism, and studied psychology in my undergraduate courses. And this is kind of bridging both of them together, studying in this field. So, yeah.
Hey. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my why I teach special education. Of course, I started way back when, before I had any grandchildren, but I wanted to kind of share with you this picture of my grandson. He is a big reason why I love supporting and helping children with special needs. He has autism, as I said. These are a lot of pictures when he's 3 years old. If you look right here on the top left corner, that's him going to the Imagine Dragons concert with my beautiful daughter and her other children. He loves Imagine Dragons, so he'll sit and watch Imagine Dragons videos all the time on TV and just loves Imagine Dragons. And then he's just a smart kid. You can see he's matching words to pictures already. Just loves to put puzzles together. Loves ice cream. He also down here you can see he spelled Despicable Me. He loves to watch like different video clips, and so he'll watch it and then he'll like actually write out words and really fun. And in the middle down here you can see he's kind of in this pot. My daughter had there was nothing in the pot, but she was weeding outside and she turned around and he was sitting in this pot splashing water. And it was just such a fun thing, for her to see that because it had rained the night before, I think. So the pot was full of water, but she just had to take a picture. He gets into a lot of trouble. He's a mischievous kid, but he is so sweet. And every time I go, like we just barely went to visit them this weekend, every time I go and get to have time with him, it is such a special thing for me. So your children, the children I've worked with in the past, just just I feel like it's such an incredible blessing that we get to be a part of their lives and such a wonderful thing for us as parents and as teachers to grow and learn from them because they're incredible human beings. I know as parents, you guys, I'm sure feel that way about your children. So, anyways, thank you for sharing them with us, because they're wonderful human beings. All right.
Okay, so we're kind of going to start with getting to know you activity, Fefa'a Sawa'i, just kind of sharing a bit about our backgrounds, about who we are. So I guess you don't have to do this as a reflection, but for people here today, you could share your name and then one word that kind of reflects a value or goal that you have when it comes to helping your child or other children with diverse learning needs, and then also a sentence or two about why you chose that word. So I'll go first. As I said, my name is Ocean, and one word that I would pick out would probably be patience. And I think this is important, not only having patience with your child, the child you're working with, but also having patience with yourself, and like learning these new skills and applying them. Um, Someone want to go ahead and also share theirs?
Yeah, I can go. I think the word that comes to me when I think of like a value or goal I want for children with disabilities is communication. I feel like communication is so important. How can we help them communicate their needs to us? So I always think about that, and it really, really matters to me because I think communication is the most important thing we could teach children because we all know how to communicate pretty well with each other, right? But for them, it can be very hard sometimes. And so figuring out ways to help them helps it like makes me so happy when I can see a child communicate their needs in an appropriate way.
Okay, I can go next. There's so many words, so many. But
Yeah.
I guess today I could say like expectations. Just to manage your expectations. Have high expectations for your kids. Don't ever limit them or say, they can't do this because they have that disability. They're not going to be able to communicate because they can't talk. Don't ever have low expectations, but keep your expectations high and just, be prepared to be surprised. Yeah.
I love that.
I agree, Sandy. The word that I think of when I think of special education is advocate, and that's something that I'd like to be. I think our kids, we want to help them communicate, but sometimes they need some help. And as adults, we need to be able to be that advocate for them and helping them achieve their goals and um, like attain different things that they need to achieve those goals.
Well, thank you guys for sharing. Those are wonderful. Um, so one of the things we like to kind of let parents know up front is like there is no magic pill to solving behavior issues, It's not behavior is not random. It's really learned over time, and it's really a means of communication, right? And so if we if we could give you a magic pill for your child or even for ourselves, man, because we have behavior issues too sometimes, we'd give it to you and life would be grand. But really, there isn't a magic pill. There's a lot of different things we have to do to understand behavior. Taking data, we have to learn to be patient. We have to learn to analyze our data, right? And we have to have a sustained effort and a lot of reinforcement over time. So it's important to, if you ever thought, okay, I'm going to go to this training and they're going to just say exactly what I need to know to help my child, that is not really true. That never really happens. But over time, you can learn to help support your child, and there's a lot of different things that you can do. But we just want to make, kind of tell you up front that again, there is no magic pill. Um, but we do have different ways to assess and help and support them. And over time, you can help your child be able to communicate the things they need to in a way that's appropriate and helpful for everyone around them too. All right. So let's talk a little bit about our goals today. Um, we really want you to understand emotions and brain-based behavior. I think starting with that sometimes helps you kind of understand why children behave the way they do. And then we're going to talk about recognizing and responding to behavior escalation and how we look at those parts of the cycle of them getting up and intense, then moving down into kind of more of a calm state. And we want you to kind of recognize those phases. And then we're going to talk about building collaborative strategies for home and school, because that's a really important part of helping your child to succeed. I love this quote right here. It says, if a child doesn't know how to read, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to behave, we punish. Why don't we teach? I think that's a really good thing to think about, especially as teachers, in the field. But you, as a parent, you're kind of a teacher to your child, right? You help them learn and grow. And so, why sometimes we move right to punishment? Why do we do that? It's something to really, really think about. And I think a lot of it has to do with we actually, a lot of times, don't know what to do. We're put in a situation where we're like, I have no idea what to do. And the first thing that comes to your mind is maybe a punishment, like go to your room, or stop doing that, and the child then gets more dysregulated and there's more behavior that comes out of that. So, well, hopefully today you'll learn some things that will be helpful for you and with your child. Okay.
Okay, so here we have some words that we can use to describe different types of dysregulation or behavior in children and adults. So um, one would be fa'a vala vala, oh, leanga, meaning bad behavior or misbehavior, can also mean crazy, defiant, or on tirade. Liusitai, meaning disobedient. Fa'a logo leanga, not listening well. Fa'a gase gase, acting erratically or foolishly, out of control, flip the lid. Fa'a sao sao, wild or reckless or agitated. And then fa'a lave lave, being restless, fidgety, or unsettled. So these are just a few of the words that we've picked out that can be used to categorize behavior, but I think it's important to note that behavior might not always fit into one of these words or one of these categories because behavior is so diverse. But these are just some examples of words that might be used.
Is there any other, Sandy, you can think of when you get frustrated? What are some things, or you've heard?
Ula is another one. Just mean, wild, running around. It's a good one too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And just like Ocean said, like, yeah, you might hear these words or you might say them, and it's very frustrating at times. But really, these behaviors really, is a child really crazy? Most of the time, they're just trying to communicate, right? And so it's easy to kind of jump to these words, and you might hear other people say these words. But, you as parents can help correct other people and say, you know what? You might think they're being crazy right now, but really they're just trying to communicate something, right? They're trying to help me understand something, and we need to help figure out how to help them communicate to us their needs. So I think sometimes some of these words can be negative, really, and they can possibly hurt your feelings as parents. I know if someone said to my child or my grandchild that has autism, like, oh, he's just out of control, or he's on a tirade. He's just like, he's crazy, For me, I would be like, okay, I obviously don't understand my child enough. Yes, there is some behavior that's not appropriate here, but this child is really trying to communicate, and I need to help support this child um, so that they can communicate in a better way. Any thoughts on that, Sandy, that you wanted to add? Okay.
Yeah, I think every parent can probably remember a word or something said about their child that was very upsetting. I mean, there's one that sticks in my head from when Jasmine was about maybe 5 or 6 that has never gone away. And I think it's important to remember too, as parents, that bringing up a child with a disability is not going to be the same at all as a typical child. And we have to, I mean, parents are going through a whole lot of learning to begin with, and then to be, to also have to try to teach the community on top of learning yourself, it's just it's such a task. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it really, really is. Thank you for sharing that, Sandy.
Um, just to go off what Agatha was saying, an escalated behavior isn't out of defiance most of the time. They're not trying to make you upset. Your child's not trying to do something wrong. The child's just trying to communicate. And that's the way that they know how to communicate. So what we're trying to do is just help them learn more appropriate ways of communication. For us as adults, it's important that we respond with safety and not control, because control can often lead the student or the child to feel more scared, which will escalate the behavior. This quote, really quick, says, "Behind every behavior is a need. When a child is escalated, our job is not to punish the behavior, but to understand the need." So I'm sure, Sandy, you've experienced this. Like, Jasmine will do something and you probably get upset, but she's just trying to tell you what she needs. And I think everybody's experienced that. I've experienced that as well. And I mean, I do that sometimes too. I'm like, doesn't somebody understand that the reason I'm doing this is because I need this? But we, it's just behavior. We just need to understand and communicate. Um, there is a function behind every behavior or a reason why a behavior happens. We like to use this acronym, everyone eats, because eating is the best. So it's easy to remember. So there's four functions. There's escape, attention, tangible, or sensory. Escape is wanting to leave a situation or a task. So for example, it could be running away from a parent. So the individual is upset, they don't want to do what the parent's asking, so they run away. That's an escape behavior. An attention maintained behavior is saying Tina all the time, or when someone just needs a lot of attention, they're like, "Oh, let me talk to you all the time." They tell you all about their day, those kind of things. They blurt out. Tangibles is access to something. So for example, a child could take a toy away from someone because they want that toy. So their purpose is to get that toy, but they access it in an inappropriate way. And then sensory, we also call automatic reinforcement, is behaviors that help the child with their sensory needs. So for example, like hand flapping, or I have a student who vocally will stimulate himself, so he'll speak in repetitive patterns, and it helps stimulate him and regulate himself sensorily.
Yeah. And sometimes we see that there's several behaviors happening, right? Functions happening for
Mhm.
a certain behavior. So they could be wanting to escape and gain attention and get a tangible item. And when we have, several of these functions come together, those are usually our hardest kids to really help support because they're getting a lot of different things from throwing that behavior. They're getting the item, they're getting attention, they're escaping, and they like all of those. They're highly rewarding to them. So those can be obviously like the most difficult. And as I've worked with kids, if they just want to escape, that can be easier to support and help. But when a kid has escape, attention, and tangible, we're working with a lot of different ways to help support them with their behavior to get those needs met. So, right.
Behavior is also like a chain. Every chain is connected, like every link is connected to each other. And in order to change a behavior, you need to find the links that are broken and you need to get rid of them and then make new chains. Um, so, for example, there's this example right here. I don't know if you can see that super well. But a parent will ask a child to complete a one-page math assignment. The student says, "I'm not doing this math assignment." Parent says, "You need to finish it before you can have screen time." The child rips up the paper. Parent rewrites the worksheet, and then the child runs away. So at some point, there's something in this chain of behavior that isn't working for the student. So you need to find what's not working and replace it with something that will help the student actually change their behavior to something more appropriate.
Yep. I love that. That's a great example because, like, if you're looking at the different parts of this, we call it ABCs, antecedent behavior consequence. There's something that happens before the behavior occurs, right? And then the behavior occurs, and then there's a consequence, which is like the parent says, you have to finish it before you can have screen time. Sometimes, if you just change what you do there, like the consequence, you say something different, that can break that chain, and we no longer have escalated behavior. So that's a whole other training. There's so many more things we can talk about. But it is really, really important for you to kind of realize and see, hey, if there's a problem with this behavior, there might be a sequence here that we need to change something in this sequence to help support this child better.
Also, to understand the rest of this training and just behavior in general, We need to understand the brain and also how it connects to our emotions. Um, we have the brain. It's very complicated. And I think everybody knows that because we experience very complicated thoughts, very complicated feelings, because our brain influences our emotions, our behaviors, and our thinking. So we have different parts of our brain. We have the frontal cortex or the cerebrum. Um, on the next slide, Agatha. This is called the rational brain, like right here, right in the front. This one is developed the very last in our life, and usually this doesn't develop until we're in our mid-20s. So that's why children often have a hard time managing their behavior because their frontal cortex isn't fully developed. They have it, but it's not fully developed. This is part of the logical, reflective and problem-solving part of our brain. It also helps us with logic and reasoning. So that's why a lot of people will engage in behavior when they're young because they don't have that reasoning part of their brain fully developed yet. And then we also have the amygdala in our brain. It's in the very back. This part of the brain is in like most animals' brains as well. It's very survival focused and reactive. It controls emotions, memory, and the fight or flight response. So it's located like in the very center in the back of your brain. Um, a lot of students, when they are engaging in problematic behavior, they aren't in their rational brain. Like they're slipped back into the amygdala. They are in fight or flight. So they're not really engaging in a behavior rationally. They are scared and they're in their amygdala. Yes. So about 90% of brain growth occurs in the first 5 years of development. But then there's also experiences and genetics that can shape the way that our brain is. So, for example, a genetic predisposition for ADHD could affect how a child's brain works, but also just experiences like trauma or maybe just a nurturing relationship or anything that happens to a child. It can affect their emotional regulation, their attention, their learning, and their behavior. So that all affects the way that they respond to things, which can help us understand how to help treat that problem behavior.
So kind of adding on to what Margaret was talking about emotion and emotional regulation. Our emotions can have many behavioral implications. Um, Children often operate from the emotional brain, so that can have a lot of implications on their behavior and the way they express their emotions. Emotions can overwhelm thinking, not just in children, but in adults too. Everyone experiences these kind of responses to certain emotions. Um, and again, our rational brain is underdeveloped until about our mid-20s. That's why it can make it hard for children to regulate their own emotions. And emotional overload can block rational thinking. So kind of going back to what Margaret said about the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and kind of that fight or flight response, when we're faced with a lot of emotions at once, it can be hard for us to take on. So our fight or flight response can kick in and kind of um, react to whatever emotions we're facing at that point. So that's just like one example of how emotional overload can take over. So emotional overload is when you're experiencing too many emotions at once. This can, for example, could be feeling anger, frustration, and sadness all in one moment. And I know, I'm sure many people can relate to being in a class and you're confused and frustrated because you're not understanding and you kind of like want to take a break. So that's an example of an emotional overload. Um, in those moments, emotions can become too intense for us to handle, and it can feel like the mind is flooded, your thoughts are racing, and the usual ways you use to cope with emotions aren't working.
Perfect.
Some common signs of emotional overload include feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or panicky, having sudden mood swings or outbursts. This can be crying or yelling, feeling numb or emotionally shut down, trouble concentrating or making decisions, dealing with fatigue or burnout, and then physical symptoms like headaches, chest tightness, or stomach issues. So I'm sure these are things that everyone can relate to experiencing. And some causes could be stress buildup, trauma triggers, sensory overload, mental health conditions, and sleep deprivation.
Yeah. I again, like Ocean said, like we all probably have felt those feelings before of emotional overload. Um, I sometimes I will get so emotionally overloaded that I really can't like function. I need to like go to a quiet space. I need to like relax, take a deep breath. One of the things I do when I get like overloaded is I will go sit in my hot tub for a few minutes, or, I know Sandy likes to swim. Maybe that's something she does. But just having those little times to kind of just de-stress and to relax really helps me get out of that overwhelming state. Any of you guys have any experiences that you'd like to share where you felt this way?
I get overstimulated by a lot of sound. So, for example, the other day we had a lot of our cousins come over for a dinner. There was like 20 plus people in our living room, and I was like, it's so loud. I'm feeling really overstimulated. I'm feeling very overwhelmed. I'm starting to get angry at these people because they're making noise, but they're not doing anything wrong. So I had to step out and I was like, okay, I need to cool down. So I put some headphones in that made it a little bit quieter, and then I came back and I was able to be okay.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Margaret. Yeah, I think again, we all get into a space like this. And so if we get that way, if our amygdala um is really trying to help keep us safe, and so when we have these emotions, we kind of go into this fight and flight sometimes. um, we are really just trying to protect ourselves, right? When these things happen, we're trying to protect ourselves because everything's overwhelming for us. We can't handle it. We're really frustrated. I know as a parent, sometimes I used to get really frustrated with my children. I cannot lie. And so I would go into my room and have that time. But our children really do have these fight and flight responses, and they are really quick sometimes to get there, right? And sometimes there's no real threat. So I don't know, Sandy, if you've ever experienced this, where Jasmine maybe overreacted to something that totally wasn't a threatening situation to you or to most people, right? But she went into the fight and flight really quick. And we tend to see that a lot with our special ed kids because they have a harder time, right? Really thinking through things. And so sometimes they just go right into that. Um, and we want to make sure that we're kind of helping them understand ways to calm down and not get to that fight and flight kind of area. Um, yeah, so we all experience this. So we're really, really just trying to help them. Ocean, did you have anything else to say on this? I'm sorry, I jumped in here.
No, you
Okay.
got it.
Okay. Um, this is really cool. See this graphic right here? It's like what we don't see. Okay, so what we do see is we see the crying, aggression, avoidance, yelling, okay? But what we don't see underneath are like the actual reasons why the behaviors are occurring. Sensory overload, there's a change in a routine, right? So children struggle with that sometimes, and so that they're like, whoo, we're fight and flight right there. Difficulty communicating their needs. They can't communicate, so they're so frustrated that they get to that anxiety and overwhelming state. And no wonder why our children struggle sometimes. Difficulty in expressing emotions. Sometimes they just don't know how they're feeling, right? That can be so difficult. Experiencing physical pain and sickness. When someone's sick, when you're sick and someone's pressuring you or like trying to get you to do things, man, you just like there's going to be resistance there, right? Right? And then functional difficulties, right? Difficulties processing instructions, tasks too challenging, moody due to lack of sleep or hunger. I know when I'm hunger, I don't know what they call that, hangry. I don't know if you call that, and Sandy, you guys say that word in there, but like we call it hangry, where we just are angry because we are hungry and we can't function, right? It's a basic part of our lives that we need to have food, right? And so when we don't have food, sometimes we can't really function that well. So those are all things to really think about. So, an example might be a parent is trying to get a child out the door, and one child can't find their shoes, another is refusing to eat breakfast, the baby's crying, the phone buzzes with a message from work about an urgent issue, and the parent feels their chest tighten and their patience drain and they snap. I don't know if you've ever had a lot of things going on like this. Maybe um, it's not because they're a bad parent, right? They're not a bad parent, but because their brain is signaling danger, right? That fight and flight, and their amygdala is taken over. Okay. That's an example of emotional overload. Okay. Children experience this too. Okay. When their world feels chaotic, uncertain, or unsafe. Recognize this helps us respond with more empathy and intention. So if we know what's going on with our child, if we know that that amygdala for them is just they're in fight or flight, it helps us know like, okay, we know we felt this way before. We understand that the brain isn't functioning correctly, right? So any kind of reasoning that you're trying to do at that time with your child is just not going to work. Sandy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it's like we have 10 seconds left. So
Oh,
I kept sending messages. I don't think anybody's on. Did you want to just log back on and finish?
I think we can probably get through part of it. Yeah, I can go till
Or disconnect?
6.
Okay. I mean, it's up to you. So just log back on. I'll save
Okay.
this recording and then open it back up again. Yeah.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
See. Sorry.
Okay.